Hello everyone, and welcome to my Bold and Beautiful Today channel. Pack your bag and leave. Ridge and Eric kicked Taylor out of the house after returning from Italy. Taylor Hayes's bones, the elegant wood of the Forrester mansion's entrance feeling suddenly like a prison wall sealing her out, not in. Mere hours ago, descending the private jet steps onto Los Angeles tarmac, she'd floated on a cloud woven from the golden threads of Italian sunlight and Ridge Forrester's renewed devotion. Florence had been a renaissance of them, stolen kisses amidst Renaissance art, whispered promises over candlelit dinners, Ridge's gaze holding hers with an intensity that banished years of Brooke Logan's shadow. She'd finally, outmaneuvered destiny, convinced Ridge that she was his true north, his sanctuary, the love that had endured every storm Brooke had whipped up. Returning to the mansion, she'd anticipated a triumphant homecoming, the solidification of her rightful place beside Ridge, perhaps even the beginning of planning a future untarnished by Brooke's specter. Instead, the air inside the grand foyer turned arctic the moment she crossed the threshold, thick with an unspoken verdict that sucked the warmth from her Italian tan and replaced it with a creeping dread. Ridge stood rigid, his face not the canvas of love she'd left in Italy, but a stony mask etched with conflict and a chilling detachment, his eyes avoiding hers, fixed instead on some distant point of painful resolution. Beside him, Eric Forrester, the usually gentle patriarch, radiated a quiet, formidable fury she hadn't seen directed at her in decades. His posture was ramrod straight, his kind eyes now glacial chips of blue ice, radiating a profound disappointment that felt heavier than any shout. There was no greeting, no inquiry about the trip, only that suffocating silence, thick enough to choke on. Then Eric spoke, his voice low, controlled, yet carrying the finality of a judge's gavel. Taylor. Pack your bag. And leave. The words hit her like a physical blow, stealing her breath. Leave? After everything? After Italy? After Ridge's vows? This couldn't be real. It was a nightmare, a cruel joke. Her eyes flew to Ridge, desperate for him to countermand his father, to laugh it off, to wrap her in his arms and declare Eric mistaken. But Ridge remained silent, his jaw clenched, his gaze still averted, confirming Eric's edict with his devastating muteness. It was the silence that broke her first wave of denial. Ridge? Her voice, usually so confident, wavered, laced with disbelief and burgeoning panic. What is this? What are you saying? After Florence, after everything we just. She took a step towards him, her hand reaching out instinctively, needing the anchor of his touch. He flinched, almost imperceptibly, but enough. That tiny recoil was more eloquent than any speech. Taylor, Ridge finally spoke, his voice gravelly, strained, devoid of the warmth that had melted her in Italy. It's over. You need to go. Over? The word echoed in the cavernous room, mocking the passionate declarations whispered under the Tuscan moon. How could it be over when it had just begun anew? When he'd held her and promised her forever only days ago? The cognitive dissonance was staggering. Go? Go where? She stammered, her mind racing, scrambling for purchase on the crumbling cliff of her reality. This is my home. We decided. In Italy, Ridge. You chose me. You said Brooke was your past. Her voice rose, sharp with hysteria clawing at the edges. Brooke is his wife, Eric interjected, his tone cutting through her desperation like a scalpel. His family. Whatever fantasy you spun in Italy, whatever manipulation you employed, it ends now. You crossed a line, Taylor. A line that cannot be uncrossed. The accusation of manipulation stung, but the confirmation that Brooke was still the immovable object, the wife, the family, was the deeper wound. Ridge hadn't chosen her over Brooke, he'd merely taken a brief, disastrous vacation from reality, and now reality, in the implacable form of Eric Forrester and Ridge's own ingrained loyalty to the Logan Forrester dynasty, had violently reasserted itself. She saw it then, the flicker in Ridge's eyes, not love, not desire, but guilt, regret, and a desperate need for her to simply disappear so he wouldn't have to face the wreckage of his own indecision. Italy hadn't been a new beginning, it had been his final, spectacular act of cowardice before retreating to the familiar cage of his obligations. So, that's it? Taylor whispered, the fight momentarily draining out of her, replaced by a crushing wave of humiliation. After all these years, all the pain, all the times I stood by you, Ridge, you let your father order me out like some unwanted guest? Her gaze swept the opulent foyer, the symbol of the Forrester power and prestige she had coveted, fought for, believed she'd finally secured. It felt alien now, hostile. Every piece of art, every gleaming surface, seemed to reflect her own profound foolishness back at her. Yes, Eric stated, unwavering. That's precisely it. You inserted yourself where you don't belong. You exploited a moment of weakness. You damaged this family. Now, you will leave it. Pack your bag. The repetition was a nail hammered into the coffin of her hopes. There was no appeal. No negotiation. The patriarch had spoken, and the heir apparent, however conflicted, had silently assented. The Italian dream curdled into a grotesque farce. The passionate promises revealed themselves as the hollow lies of a man trapped between women and responsibilities. Ridge's silence wasn't just agreement, it was his tacit admission that Brooke, the Logans, the company, the appearance of stability, mattered more than the tumultuous, all-consuming fire he'd briefly reignited with her. Taylor Hayes, the brilliant psychiatrist, the fierce protector, the woman who had weathered countless battles for Ridge Forrester's heart, found herself reduced to an evictee. The walk to the guest room she'd occupied felt like traversing a mile of broken glass. Her hands trembled violently as she yanked open drawers, pulling out the elegant clothes she'd so carefully packed for her romantic triumph. The vibrant silks and soft linens felt like costumes for a play that had closed abruptly after opening night. Each item tossed haphazardly into the open suitcase was a piece of her dignity discarded. The meticulous care she usually took was gone. This was an expulsion, not a departure. Zippers snarled as she forced them closed over the overflowing mess, a sound mirroring the tearing of her carefully reconstructed world. She didn't fold, she stuffed, wanting only to be gone from the suffocating atmosphere of judgment and betrayal. The weight of the suitcase as she dragged it back down the hall felt like the weight of her own shattered illusions. Ridge was still there, near the door, but he might as well have been a statue. He couldn't, or wouldn't, meet her eyes. Eric remained immovable, a silent sentinel ensuring her departure. As she reached the foyer, Taylor stopped, the suitcase handle digging into her palm. She turned, not to plead, but to deliver a final, scorching gaze. You think this ends it, Ridge? Her voice was low, dangerous now, stripped of hysteria, vibrating with cold fury. You think sending me away with your father's command erases Italy? Erases what you said. What you did. You're a coward. You always have been when it comes to choosing between Brooke and me. You used me. Again. And this time, you won't forget it. Neither will she. The she hung in the air, a venomous promise aimed squarely at Brooke, wherever she was. She saw Ridge flinch again, a flicker of something, fear? Regret? Finally crossing his stony facade, but it was too little, far too late. Eric simply gestured towards the door, his expression unreadable but implacable. Goodbye, Taylor. Not take care, not safe travels. Just goodbye. The finality was absolute. Taylor Hayes yanked open the heavy front door herself, the California sunlight blinding after the mansion's shadowed condemnation. She didn't look back. Stepping over the threshold felt less like leaving and more like being cast out. The door clicked shut behind her with a soft, decisive sound that echoed the closing of this catastrophic chapter. Standing alone on the manicured driveway, the absurd weight of the hastily packed suitcase at her side, the Italian sun a cruel, distant memory, Taylor Hayes was no longer the triumphant victor returning from a romantic conquest. She was the exile, publicly ejected, humiliated, her dreams scattered like the contents of her bag. Ridge hadn't fought for her. Eric had banished her. The Forrester mansion, the symbol of the life she craved, stood behind her, silent and imposing, its doors firmly shut. The only sound was the ragged gasp of her own breath, the sound of a woman realizing that after decades of war, she'd finally, definitively, lost. The battle for Ridge Forrester's soul was over, and Brooke Logan, without even being present, had won. The command, "pack your bag and leave," wasn't just an instruction, it was the brutal punctuation mark on a love story that had finally, fatally, run its course. Check out this brand new couple. Bill Spencer and Taylor Hayes on the bold and the beautiful now that Ridge Forrester and Brooke Logan are together again, right? Seeing how Taylor Hayes is now a free agent, it would be quite fitting for her to move on with someone like Bill Spencer while also making Ridge's head explode over it. There's no way that he would take this lightly at all. It goes without saying that B&B fans were definitely vocal on social media regarding the issue. Some even commented with, "This is intriguing. I would like it if he would love her madly as she deserves. I likely, okay, she bends the rules from time to time, but they could be a power couple." Taylor Hayes' newfound freedom and Bill Spencer Jr.'s perpetual hunger for both conquest and chaos. With Ridge Forrester finally, decisively, retreating into the perpetually open arms of Brooke Logan, a cycle as predictable as the Pacific tides yet no less disruptive, Taylor stands uniquely unmoored, a brilliant psychiatrist and fiercely loyal soul finally untethered from the decades-long gravitational pull of the Forrester patriarch, her legendary resilience tested yet again but leaving her not broken, but remarkably unshackled. It is precisely within this vulnerable, potent space of liberation that the prospect of Taylor aligning herself, romantically or strategically, with the one man guaranteed to detonate Ridge's carefully reconstructed world like a neutron bomb detonating in the heart of Forrester Creations, the ruthless, charismatic, endlessly provocative Bill Spencer, emerges not just as compelling drama, but as a stroke of narrative genius, a pairing crackling with such inherent conflict, thematic resonance, and sheer explosive potential that it feels less like fan speculation and more like destiny finally catching up to characters perpetually orbiting each other on the periphery of warring dynasties. Imagine the seismic shift. Dr. Taylor Hayes, the epitome of compassion, ethics, and maternal devotion, whose very name once symbolized stability against Brooke's perceived tempestuousness, choosing the company of Dollar Bill, a man whose moral compass points unerringly towards profit and power, whose past is littered with manipulations, blackmail, and a willingness to shatter lives and families, including the Forresters and Logans, with a smirk and a perfectly tailored suit. The inherent contradiction is deliciously jarring, the healer and the destroyer, the voice of reason and the architect of Bedlam. Yet, therein lies the profound intrigue. Taylor is no naive innocent. She carries the scars of Ridge's waffling, the pain of betrayal, not least from Sheila Carter's manipulations, and the weariness of constantly playing second fiddle. Bill, for all his ruthless pragmatism, possesses an undeniable magnetism, a fierce protectiveness towards those he claims as his own, however warped that claim might sometimes be, and an unapologetic ambition that could offer Taylor a thrilling, dangerous counterpoint to Ridge's often indecisive passion. For Taylor, Bill represents a radical departure, a defiant step onto a path bathed not in the soft, familiar light of Forrester legacy, but in the sharp, electric glare of Spencer ambition, a chance to wield power on her own terms, unburdened by the ghosts of bridge comparisons, to be desired not as a consolation prize but as a formidable prize in her own right, a partner in a venture utterly distinct from the recycled drama of the past. The sheer, unadulterated spectacle of Ridge Forrester's reaction is the combustible engine driving this fantasy, the man who spent years ping-ponging between the two women, whose indecision carved deep wounds into both, would be utterly apoplectic. The thought of Taylor, his Taylor, the steadfast anchor he so often took for granted, choosing the man he despises above all others, his business rival, his moral antithesis, the serpent who slithered into his family and nearly destroyed it multiple times over, would be an unimaginable affront, a nuclear strike on his ego and perceived ownership. Ridge's head wouldn't just explode, it would likely trigger a supernova of rage, jealousy, and desperate, flailing attempts to intervene, fueled by a toxic cocktail of possessiveness and the terrifying realization that he might have genuinely lost her not to Brooke, but to his ultimate nemesis. Witnessing Ridge grapple with this, the impotent fury, the shattered assumptions, the potential for reckless, Spencer-worthy schemes born of pure, unadulterated panic, is a dramatic goldmine the show has scarcely tapped. Bill, ever the master puppeteer and opportunist, would undoubtedly relish every microsecond of Ridge's torment. The chance to finally, decisively claim something Ridge held dear, to twist the knife not just in a business deal but in the most personal arena, aligns perfectly with Bill's modus operandi. He thrives on winning, on dominance, and securing Taylor Hayes, a woman of intellect, beauty, and inherent goodness that contrasts starkly with his usual liaisons, would be the ultimate trophy, a victory transcending mere stock acquisitions. Furthermore, Bill, beneath the bluster, possesses a complex vulnerability regarding family and acceptance. Taylor, with her inherent warmth and capacity for deep connection, qualities starkly absent in many of his past relationships, could offer a surprisingly potent allure, a chance at a different kind of partnership, one that might challenge his cynicism and perhaps even coax out a more refined, though no less formidable, version of himself. He might see in her not just a weapon against Ridge, but a queen worthy of his empire, someone whose integrity could lend his power a newfound legitimacy, a power-coupled dynamic far more potent than any fleeting affair. The fan fervor, as glimpsed on social media, underscores the potent cocktail this pairing represents. Comments like, "This is intriguing. I would like it if he would love her madly as she deserves. I likely, okay, she bends the rules from time to time but they could be a power couple," capture the essential duality, the desire for genuine, transformative love for Taylor, love her madly as she deserves, coupled with the thrilling recognition of their combined potential, power couple. Fans intuitively grasp the narrative richness, the challenge to Bill to rise above his baser instincts for a woman truly worth changing for, the opportunity for Taylor to experience a passion unclouded by Ridge's shadow, and the promise of fireworks generated by their union. They see beyond the initial shock value to the deeper possibilities. Could Bill Spencer, faced with a woman of Taylor's unwavering, though tested, moral core, discover a capacity for selflessness or even redemption? Could Taylor, embracing a partnership forged in mutual respect for each other's strength rather than nostalgic longing, finally step fully out of the good girl box and command the narrative? The potential for character evolution is immense. Moreover, Till I Am wouldn't exist in a vacuum, it would send shockwaves through the entire canvas. Brooke would be confronted with a Taylor no longer pining for Ridge but elevated, powerful, and allied with her own sometimes enemy, forcing a re-evaluation of their dynamic. Steffi and Thomas would be thrown into turmoil, torn between loyalty to their mother and their complicated history with Bill, especially given Steffi's past entanglement and Thomas's manipulations often mirroring Bill's tactics. Liam and Wyatt would be thrust into the impossible position of navigating their father's latest earth-shattering romance, particularly with a woman tied so deeply to the Forresters. Even characters like Carter or Paris could find new alliances or conflicts emerging from this seismic realignment. The power dynamics at Spencer Publications and Forrester Creations would instantly tilt, creating fertile ground for fresh corporate battles infused with intensely personal stakes. Bill gaining Taylor's insights and loyalty could make him a more cunning adversary for Ridge, while Taylor gaining access to Spencer resources could empower her in unprecedented ways, perhaps even reviving her medical career or philanthropic endeavors on a grand scale. The dramatic possibilities are truly endless, offering a revitalizing jolt to storylines that risk stagnation. Ultimately, the brilliance of pairing Bill Spencer and Taylor Hayes lies in its perfect storm of character-driven motivation, high-stakes conflict, and thematic depth. It leverages Taylor's hard-earned liberation not for a safe, predictable choice, but for a plunge into the deep end with the most dangerous, exciting swimmer in the pool. It utilizes Bill's inherent nature as an agent of chaos, but channels it towards a target ripe for disruption, Ridge, while offering him a prize of unparalleled value. It promises the kind of operatic emotional fallout that is the lifeblood of soap opera, fueled by a betrayal Ridge would feel in his very bones. And crucially, it resonates with the audience's desire to see Taylor truly cherished and empowered, while simultaneously indulging the thrill of watching Bill Spencer meet a woman who might just be his match, forcing him to potentially confront his own demons or unleash them with renewed ferocity. It's more than just a coupling. It's a declaration of narrative war, a promise of deliciously complex character exploration, and the kind of high-voltage storytelling that could redefine the bold and the beautiful landscape for years to come, proving that sometimes, the the most unexpected collision creates the brightest, most unforgettable explosion. Let Ridge's head explode, the resulting fireworks would be spectacular television.